Hi, welcome back everybody to our Rules of the Road series, and welcome to part three, Determining Risk of Collision. Last time we talked about different kinds of vessels that the rules of the road apply to, in particular power vessels and sail vessels. And we also mentioned that every boat driver, power or sail, is responsible for avoiding collisions. But how do you know if you're at risk of a collision? Well, first you keep a lookout, and then you watch the relative bearing of vessels that are approaching you. So here's what all that means. The rules say that every vessel shall keep a lookout at all times to assess the risk of collision. This includes watching and listening for other boats the entire time that you're out on the water. So if you can't see what's on the other side of the sails, move to where you can see or have someone else look for you. On this boat, the jib is too low to see under and it has no windows to see through. So the skipper and crew need to keep a lookout for what might be behind the jib. One common way to assess risk of collision is using a compass bearing as a reference point. That just means looking at where the other boat is relative to a compass direction. If you don't have a compass, you can use some fixed object on your boat, such as a shroud, as your reference point. Whether you use a compass direction as your reference point or a part of your boat as a reference point, if the direction of an approaching vessel does not appear to be changing from your reference point, that's called a constant bearing, and that means there's a risk of collision. So, for example, you look up and see an approaching boat. The compass bearing is roughly west-northwest, and the approaching boat also lines up in your port shroud. As you watch, the compass bearing is still the same, and also the boat doesn't seem to be changing position relative to the shroud. As you watch, the bearing still isn't changing either to the compass direction or the shroud, and when the bearing doesn't change, that means you're at risk of collision. Another time you look up and see an approaching boat, and the compass bearing is roughly west-northwest, and the approaching boat also lines up in your port shroud. But as you watch, the direction of the approaching boat is changing. Its relative position is moving from left to right. Now its compass bearing is more northwest, and it's not in the port shroud anymore. If its bearing continues to change, that means it will likely move past you. However, even when the bearing of an approaching vessel is changing, risk of collision might still exist if you're approaching a very large vessel or a tow or when the vessel's very close. If there's any doubt, treat the situation as if there is a risk of collision. So now you have an idea about how to figure out if you're at risk of collision. Keep a lookout and watch the other boat's bearing. Next time, we're going to talk about actions to take to avoid collisions. Until then, happy sailing, everybody.